Maybe the real fragments of silicon was the friends we made along the way.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Let's start with you again, Petty Fan, this week, because I know you had more SSI stuff this week.
Petty Fan, we're going to need you to unmute your mic.
Yes.
You didn't hear anything.
We know.
So yeah, I actually didn't do any SSI stuff this week just because I'm still waiting for them to pick a doctor for the hearing and a date. So I have no idea when this is going to happen. And as far as mom's going, they have her going to therapy now, so her arm doesn't get locked up and stuff before surgery.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Indeed. And yeah, just been kind of doing stuff and things.
Okay. Twilight?
Let's see here now. Well, today I celebrated my mother's birthday. Baked a cake, birthday cake for her, and surprised her with it. Her birthday is actually going to be Monday, but since I was going to be over there anyway today, I surprised her with it, and we had a nice time. Well, the battle of wills between me and the stray cat's still going on. Trying to befriend the portal thing, and it's getting more used to me. So there's some progress there, but it's still fidgety. But in due time, it'll probably not be so scared of me anymore. Let's see here now. No, work's been going okay. Nothing's changed so far, thankfully, and I've been playing the game for this week, and that's about it.
All right, then. It's your turn, Golix.
Not too much going on this side of the world. It's been actually kind of cool and rainy the last few days, but I guess that's... Petty Fan, are you typing? Because I think your mic's picking it up. It's okay. I noticed it. Sorry. It was a little distracting.
Anyway.
My replay through of Breath of the Wild is going interestingly. I'm made it to the Yiga hideout, so I'll probably be there for a day or two, because that's actually annoying, because stealth segments in games that are not super designed for it are still kind of a pain in the ass. Go figure. Huh?
Wind Waker. Like,
you said Breath of the Wild.
I know, but Wind Waker had that shit too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anyway, let's see what else. Not a whole lot. I've already played the game for this week some, but I'm hoping to play it a little bit more. But it's co-op, so some of that will be dependent on, having someone to co-op with. But it wasn't amazing, so I think I've got most of the general idea.
Well, it's good to know.
And otherwise, I don't know. I've just been sort of stressed out because you can't avoid the news even if you try. So.
You're very well aware.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I guess it's my go. Let's see. I suppose the big news is tomorrow I'm heading off to see my brother. If you recall, a few weeks ago, he came over here. We're doing the reciprocation because, well, we have to learn where he is. Plus, Mother has been clearing out her cabinets and stuff, and needs me along to lift some shit. Always fun. Probably not gonna stay too long because, he wants us to be there like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's working weird hours, so hopefully it goes well. Like nobody gets lost. And outside of that, not a whole lot happening. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is our old friend and former regular crew member, NakaTeleeli.
Hello.
Hi. So how you holding up?
I'm hanging in there, which I think is about what everybody's doing this year.
Yes, it
Mhm.
is. All right. So last time you were on the program, we talked about Tofu Tower, if I'm remembering correctly. I think this game was a thing around that time, but it didn't even have a name.
I think I recall at some point a block puzzler being mentioned.
I mean, the working title of all my games is Dumb Genre Game.
I'm like, not the worst code word to have in the world. But here it is a few years later, and it's got a name, it's got an identity. It's Tofu Topple.
And Tofu
So I
Topple
suppose
is
mine-
actually a name that Barry came up with for it, and I wasn't very fond of the name, but I have not been able to think of a better one, so here we are.
Heard that one before. I wanted a better name, but I couldn't think of one. But I suppose my first question is, now is the tofu in this game the same tofu in the Tofu Tower?
Yes.
Oh, so we got lore going on here.
And I was doing a net game with Pettyfan. I'm gonna back out at this point, so I can not be trying to play and answer questions at the same time.
Hey, like I said, this is why I don't do that during interviews. And this is also why we have multiple people so they can do this. Anyway, so what's the story going on in Tofu Topple here? Like, who are Tofu's friends? Why are they competing in multiplayer puzzle games and all that stuff?
Okay, so in the Well Gaia universe, which most every game that I come up with an idea for takes place in some way in the Well Gaia universe. Maybe it doesn't involve the same characters. I've got one idea that I feel like is just going to happen on some planet 10 billion light years away. But still same universe. So Tofu Tower involved the tiny witch named Tofu trying to climb up a tower in order to get something for the nearby town. In Tofu Topple, this game is taking place a while after that. I'm not actually sure of the exact time frame after that. But this game, it's taking place after an amount of plot, just because I have a lot of characters that I wanted to put in the game, and I haven't had a chance yet to make the requisite games to tell all of their stories. So there's a little bit of unspoken story that's happened leading up to this. But for the most part you can get that on the character bios page, which mostly just speaks of that you have a couple of them, specifically Miss Naka, Ogre, and Yuki, and Karen, all met each other on Elysium, floating island. From there, there's a very large tower that I actually forget the name of, where they met most everybody else. And Tofu Topple now takes place just a little ways after that. So everybody's had a chance to kind of get to know each other, but plot wise, the game doesn't really have a lot going on. Prerequisite wise, anyway. It's not like super entwined, it's just a way to have everybody interacting with each other. Plot
Makes
wise,
sense.
what's going on is deep, deep in a mysterious forest is an archway, and that archway, magical in nature, is said to hold a legend that, or there's a legend surrounding it that is supposed to give a test of some form to anyone who comes near it, and the winner is granted immortality. Now we have everybody showing up for this, searching out to find this archway, and everybody has different reasons to be there. Some people are there specifically looking for immortality. Some people, like Miss Naka and Isami, are there looking for it just to find it. They're explorers, really. And then some people, like Ogre, got lost and just kind of ended up there. Yuki as well, actually. But one way or the other, they all find this thing around the time that it gets activated again, and they all get drawn in to a battle of skill and wits, which ends up being a match 3 gem competitive puzzle game.
You know, like usual in the real world.
Yeah, exactly how it works in the real world.
Yeah. And granted, that's a throwdown that would have happened a lot more, say, 20, 25 years ago than now. Because, well, quite frankly, this kind of puzzle game, you don't see too much anymore. Now,
Rest in peace, Magical Drop 5.
Yeah. Which is one of the main reasons I made this game in the first place.
makes sense. Like, I think the last time we saw one of these was when we reviewed Treasure Stack not too long ago.
Yeah, it's not match 3, but you do see some similar things, such as even Puyo Puyo and Tetris.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Like, if you want the proper genre name, this is called the Falling Blocks puzzle game. Now, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Although falling
Match-
is directionally variable.
Look, I didn't name these things. Be glad we're not still calling them Tetris alikes or whatever.
Fair enough.
But anyway, so yeah, how long have you been working on Tofu Topple here?
I don't want to think about it.
Insert joke about finding stream footage.
It's been a lot longer than I intended it to be. It's been probably 3 or 4 years at this point.
You know, if we had $1 for every dev who said that, we would have a lot of dollars. Like,
Our budget will be more than, like, a shoestring.
Yeah, when I
definitely.
first came up with the idea, it was actually intended to be a much smaller scope idea than my other running projects. So it was kind of a side project, just the thing I do when I got a couple minutes and I feel inclined to work on it. And it's taken me a really long time, admittedly, but I haven't exactly been putting full-time hours into working on it.
Well, I mean, you've got other things going, not just game dev, but you know, you still do the YouTube thing, and you've got real work to do. So,
Yeah, in the end, I ended up working on it maybe a couple hours over the weekend. So it was a substantial amount of time, but truth be told, if I did it again starting right now, I could probably get the same amount of work done if I worked 40 hours a week in 3 to 6 months.
Yeah,
But that's what happens when game dev isn't your primary job, or you can't make it that.
even when it is your primary job, that stuff takes a long time. Like, anyway, I suppose we should get into the netcode issues that this game's been having.
Okay, so I think most issues are behind us. But so a lot of the reason that I wanted to make this game was because I enjoy Magical Drop, and I was looking so forward to Magical Drop 5. And once Magical Drop 5 kind of dropped off the face of the earth, I was upset. I didn't get out of that what I wanted out of it. So I said, dang it, I'm going to make my own game.
With
that's where we are.
small witches and falling drools.
But one of the reasons, probably the biggest reason that 5 was ill received was netcode. So I was adamant with this one to make sure it had functional netcode. If it's not, then I'm not going to do any better than Magical Drop 5 did, and there's not going to be a lot of reason for me to do it in the first place. But as I've discovered, netcode is a pain in the butt.
Yes, it is.
So this game was done in Construct 2. It was programmed in Construct 2. And Construct 2, though it has the capacity for netcode, its netcode is limited. There's a very specific way they want you to handle the netcode, and it's kind of built around a very specific type of game. And it can do that without too much trouble. But as soon as you try to push it beyond the scope of its initial design, you start running into some problems. For example, Construct 2's netcode requires a host-server connection. There has to be one host and multiple servers connected to it. Or multiple clients connected to it, not server. Multiple clients connected to it.
Clerver.
Yes. And that works really well, of course, if you want to do something like even a small MMO, something like even something like Slither.io, which I don't think is actually netcode.
Like, say, Realm of the Mad God?
Yeah, something like that, where you have, I don't know if it would work for a proper large-scale MMO, but that's the idea of it. Whereas something like this, a host client doesn't work. If you have one of the players be the host and the other player be the client, then the host is working perfectly the entire time. And the client is dealing with input lag the entire time. It's not competitive at all because the host has too many advantages. What I needed for this game was a dual host system where each person playing is effectively running their own trusted version of the game, and they send their information to the other. So I had to jump through some hoops. And what I'm doing is still technically the host server, the host client system, but I'm faking a dual host system. That was the start of the issues. The other one is it's not meant for a kind of lobby system. It's meant for kind of a drop in and play, kind of like Realm of the Mad God, where there's not different zones or different areas you can go to, or different menus you can open up. You can leave and reconnect, or all of that. You're kind of just you hop in, you're in the game. That's it. And the lobby system that this has causes problems with that. Because hopping back and forth between layouts and having people leave and re-enter and reconnect it causes a lot of connection problems, especially when I leave, say, the game field to go back to the character select and then go back to the game field again. It gets very confused, and that's been an ongoing fight for me for a very long time. But we're past most of that, and I think we're good to go. There were at least a couple last remaining ghosts in the netcode that, because I'm using Construct 2, I don't actually even know if I have a way to fix it. I don't know if I have access to the code that would fix it. but I've done as best I can to account for those issues and let people continue to play, at least with knowledge of what's going on if something very weird happens. Not that, I'll say, something weird happens very often. I ran a couple of test streams, and we ran it through its paces. We tried to mess this thing up as bad as we could. And we did find one or two issues that proved beyond my ability to truly solve, but I could at least do something like put, as you normally do, you pump out an error message that says, "Hey, something happened," and you get kicked. That's how it has to go sometimes.
Congratulations, you broke something. You did it.
And I will say again, that was us running this game through its absolute paces, trying to find as many problems as we could. And there were a few of us playing at the time who were in pretty unique situations, computer and internet wise. So that should the fact that we ran into problems at all is kind of a normal part of testing, and it shouldn't be an expectation for someone playing. I think in the end we got something that's pretty well held together. If maybe behind the scenes it's duct tape and tears.
On a good day.
That's honestly though, that's just all of game dev.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't that like 90% game dev praying to God
Every
doesn't burst into
AAA game
flame?
that comes out, for Pete's sake, every one of them, behind the scenes, duct tape and tears.
Oh yeah,
Can confirm.
yeah. Believe me, just some of the some of the things that people have attempted, on their own, is, let's just say, defy expectations and sanity. I could tell you some stories, but they're in previous episodes. So listen to them. Anyway, so has it just been you working on the game, outside of like QA testing? Have you done all the art assets, all the programming, the music?
It's been almost entirely me. I've done all the art assets for everything. I've done all the character art, all the UI work, all of the background art, all of that. I've done all the programming, everything that goes into it. I've recruited a couple people for testing purposes, but otherwise, I'm the only one who's ever touched the raw game. However, I did contract somebody to do music for the game. Someone by the name of Stuart Ferguson, who did music, or at least worked on the music amongst a team of, I think, 2 or 3 people for Them's Fightin' Herds, which
doesn't come.
Wait,
it was
Fightin'
originally
Herds?
its original design. It was a My Little Pony fighting game, fan made. And even though the team advocated that game and said this is amazing, eventually legal work came down and said you can't do that. So they said, darn it, we're making our own game. So they did.
Yeah.
And that's Them's Fightin' Herds. And looking at it, it's there is a bit of a stigma when you say something is My Little Pony based, but there is so much skill and love that's put into that game that it looks absolutely amazing, and the music for it is fantastic. And I was amazed that I could find somebody willing to work on my silly puzzle game that could make music at that quality. Every single thing that he's made for me has absolutely blown my socks off. And right now we have, I forget how many tracks in the game. We have, each character has their own theme, and then there's also 1 or 2 for like menus and dialogue and the like. And for the character tracks, each character, I've told him who the character was, what the character was like, gave him a vague idea about what I kind of wanted the music to be like, And 2 weeks later, he'd get back to me and say, "Hey, here's this. How do you like it?" And I'd listen to it and just have to say, "It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect." Every single time.
Are you planning any sort of soundtrack release?
I haven't spoken to him about it yet, but I would still. I feel like if I did, obviously he should make every penny of it.
I mean, Steam has robust soundtrack options these days. Now, that is a thing you could do there. But I suppose you'll have to figure out the details of such things. Speaking of Steam, so Tofu Tower came out on itch.io,
Yes.
and this one's coming to Steam, or at least coming to Steam and itch.io.
I don't know
only?
yet. At least Steam.
Okay. So what was the
I
impetus?
should probably put it up on itch. Let's be honest.
Might not be the worst idea. Like,
I mean, hey, like, get your game out there. You make a game, get it out there. Let people play your game.
no arguments about that. But anyway, so the larger point here is this is your first Steam game.
Yes.
What's it been like trying to get onto the service?
Not bad at all, really. They've changed the process significantly over the years, and now like green light isn't a thing anymore.
Nope.
So it's relatively simple if you want to put a game on Steam to you have to actually get a Steam developer's license or something of the sort, and that's like $100, I think, per game, which still isn't much in the grand scheme of things. Because Steam is such an elaborate system and the store is as complicated as it was, there's kind of a lot of work you have to do behind the scenes to make your game completely presentable. And I've been doing that for a little while, and I'm just now like it does have a Steam page. You can go there and wishlist it right now.
Cough, cough.
Here, I'll post the link in the chat. So, if people want to go and wishlist that, they can do so. So many windows open. So, yeah, if you want to wishlist Naka's game, go here. Like, anyway, so you had hoped to have Tofu Topple launched by the time we were doing this interview, but clearly that didn't happen. So my question is, what is the netcode aside, what is the state of the game? How much more polish do you think you have? Like, do you have a new date in mind?
The game is effectively completed. And it's technically been effectively completed for quite some time. I would just get together and maybe do a little bit of testing, maybe put one little thing in. I'd check back on it a couple days later and just give it a look over and see if I thought of anything. It's been in a semi-releasable state for a little while now, but there were, as there always are, a couple things come up that prevent me from pushing forward with a consistent schedule, I guess. And one thing about that is our musician, Stuart, he's got kind of a lot going on right now. As an example, Them's Fightin' Herds just released an update with a new character, and he was working on that. I think he's also got an actual job. So he's been a little bogged down recently, and even though I only had one track left to complete, he simply hasn't had the time to dive into it. And because of that, I understood this beforehand, so it didn't come out of nowhere. But because of that, I haven't known exactly when he would be able to finish that final music track. And that was probably one of the last things that I was waiting on. And if I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, then it's hard for me to set a release date, because then I'll set a release date and maybe something comes up and it takes them too long to get to it. And I've kind of always said that this is a more relaxed game, because this is something I'm developing in my free time. So I'm not gonna lose any sleep over missing a deadline or anything. The game will come out when it's ready to come out. As far as a release date now, I do in fact have the final music. Music is all done. I've given the game a complete look over. It's updated as much as I would want to update it. It's effectively done at this point. The last thing that I'm going to be looking into adding is Steam achievements. I don't know how long that'll take, maybe a couple days. I'm hoping to get that done soon, and then it should be ready to go. I'll probably want to give it a couple 2 or 3 weeks after that point, though, just to give press a chance to play it and look at it.
Right, right. What about Steam cards?
Steam cards, probably not going to mess with Steam cards. That is not something I've even looked into yet. I've just had enough
but
going
you could
on
make
otherwise
trading
that
cards
that's just
like
one more part of Steam that I haven't looked into yet.
Okay, Galax, you go first. Petty.
sorry. So well, you certainly could do Steam cards of like your characters and stuff. It's a lot easier than games that are entirely abstract and have to like come up with a clever name and short quip about a thing that looks like an equal sign and shoots bullets in two particular directions.
Yeah, it would be fairly easy if I was going to make them. I've got 9 characters in the game. Let's put 9 cards in. We're done.
Yeah, I have no idea what the process for that is though.
Yeah, and I may end up looking into it, and I find it's very easy to do, but I haven't looked into it at all yet. I've been too focused on actually getting the game ready and out.
Something for post launch. Anyway, so have you worked out a price for Tofu Topple?
It's going to release at $9.99. I'll probably have I think 10% is the standard for release discount.
Yeah. Okay. And now, in terms of computer platforms, is this Windows only, or are you any sort of Mac or Linux build?
Right now, it's Windows only. I don't have the capacity to make a. Technically, the Construct 2 can compile onto Mac and Linux, but I do not have the capacity to do that. So I feel like if I do, that's probably going to be a post-release thing, because how it works is I have to actually compile the game on that operating system, and I don't have a Mac.
Or a Linux.
That's not to say I can't find a workaround for that. There are even like virtual machines you can rent for that kind of thing.
Right.
So there are certainly ways to do it that I'll look into, but right now I've been working on this game for so long. The quote that I go back to is minimum effort to ship.
That is understandable, especially given how small those markets are. Like, anyway, so that's Tofu Topple. What, if anything, lies beyond that when this is finally put into release?
Okay, I do actually have plans for release or for after release. Specifically, and I think this is going to be the first time I announce this publicly anymore, but once the initial rush and probably bug fixes are behind me, I want to hold a tournament. And I'll announce this on my YouTube, so anybody can join that wants to join. I have no idea how I would handle the tournament until I know how many people are actually interested in it. but I want to hold a tournament for the game, and the winner of the tournament is going to get a character of their own added to the game as a playable character.
Is that what the question mark is, or is that random currently?
That's currently random.
Oh,
And that means that they'll be in contact with me to actually design the character, to work that character into the world of Welgaia, to come up with a garbage gem for them, and to be in contact with Stuart to make music for your character.
wow, that's quite ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
And once, probably around the same time, I was going to add perhaps another couple features to it on release. If I can get other operating systems working, then that's something that I'll certainly do. Um, I also wanted to add another game mode because right now there is a time trial mode and an endless mode. I wanted to add a third bonus mode that was very similar to, I think, endless or time trial. I forget. I forget what my plan was. But it'd be very similar to that, but you would also be dealing with garbage blocks instead of just
Random ones or specific ones?
like just randomly all of them.
Well, actually, most of the garbage. This game, one of the unique or different things I've noticed is in this game, you have full technical control over the garbage blocks, and a lot of them do actually cancel things out. But I think the person who sends them gets the points for that. Is that correct?
It depends on the gem. Most of that has been balanced. So maybe one that we found was really powerful. We kind of toned it back some so the person who sent the gem doesn't get as many points from it.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get a character like Tofu's gem, where it
Yeah,
has
Tofu's gems are just literal junk blocks that you can
there are like
crush.
4 odd gems, and you have to squish them in order to get rid of them by putting like 4 odd gems above them.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll squish the bottom gem, and then when that gem is squished, it goes back and gives Tofu a point. A character like Morgana, say, is probably one of the more typical garbage blocks from this, where you have to make a match of 3 next to her gems in order to destroy them. And when you destroy them, it leaves a regular gem behind. When this happens, Morgana gets the points for her destroyed gems, but the gems that were used to make the match go to no one. Like those points don't go to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas someone like Meat Bun, on the other hand, drops a bomb down that counts down from 3, and when it explodes, it destroys any bomb or it destroys any gem adjacent to it. And when that happens, the point not only from the bomb but every destroyed gem all goes back to Meat Bun.
Okay. I noticed several things in this actually that are significantly different than a lot of block puzzles like this. I found, and like the fact that it only advances when you want it to, and I think it isn't actually super unusual to have the only vertical matches count, although they can spread.
Mm-hmm.
And some
I'm
of
not.
that inspiration came from, honestly, it was my frustration that Magical Drop didn't pan out. So when I said I'm going to make my own game, I looked not only at Magical Drop, but a lot of other games in that genre to take inspiration from. And one of them I had was much like Magical Drop. I loved that it had different characters you can play as, and you could find a character that you kind of played well as, that you wanted to play as, that was your consistent character. And I loved that. But I was trying to think of a way to make that unique, because how Magical Drop handles it is when you send garbage to your opponent or the like, it actually raises their gems up in a specific pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You may have one character that raises all of their gems up, or maybe it's your own gems. I forget. I'm not a Magical Drop expert. But the gems go up in like straight line, all rows go up equally. whereas you may have another character that raises like one column specifically up real high. And I knew I wanted to have different different playable characters. But one thing that I wasn't as fond of with a lot of these types of games was the idea of blocking out your opponent. Because you could play for as hard as you can, for as long as you can, and if you're not dealing that finishing blow to your opponent, you might as well have done nothing at all. And that irritated me to no end. So one thing that I put a lot more emphasis on in this was a quota system where you have to destroy, and the main emphasis is to destroy a certain number of gems faster than your opponent. So, like the first one to 200.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was trying to think of ways to how do I make each character unique? If each character sends garbage gems the same way, I don't want the gems to raise automatically because I don't want blocking out to be a focus. So that's where you raising them manually comes in. So in trying to think of like how can I make each character unique, I was thinking, could I maybe drop garbage gems down in different patterns or something? Because if everybody's playing the same, then what's the point of having different characters?
Mm-hmm.
And so I forget where, but I eventually got the idea of each person just having a garbage gem that you handled differently, that you played with differently. And that's something that I can't really think I've seen anywhere else. So I had to come up with a unique garbage gem for each character. And also, unlike regular, or not regular, but more common games in the genre, instead of sending just a mountain of gems over on your opponent, which leads to trying to block out, instead I try to send just a few gems, just a couple, two or three. But those two or three are enough of a headache that it can throw a real wrench in your opponent if they don't deal with them.
Mm-hmm. Is everyone still there?
Yeah.
I
Did
am.
have
I think Naka might be having issues.
No, I'm fine.
Ah, there he
Okay,
is.
sorry. It was
I
just
didn't, sorry, I just didn't taper
it was
down with
just a
you.
very sudden quiet, so I wanted to make sure.
I do that. I raise enthusiasm,
Mhm.
and then when I hit the end of my thought, I've done nothing but raise, so I just kind of drop
That's
off
fine.
the face of the earth.
Just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yeah. Anyway, right. So I suppose we should get a development update from the proper Well Gaia. Like there is one.
I haven't touched it in probably 2 years.
So the development update is it exists.
It sure does.
The main project is a RPG / action RPG type thing, right?
It's a
Is the idea?
Metroidvania, really.
Metroidvania? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like a kind of game that takes a long time developing.
I mean,
It very much does. And when I first just started working on it, because it was effectively the very first game idea I had. That game, it started out in a very different shape than it has turned out in. When it started out, it wasn't even Well Gaia; it was something else entirely. And it's been slowly changing and morphing and becoming something else over the time. And for a great time, I used to call that my magnum opus. This will be the game. Until I realized how dumb the idea of having a magnum opus is.
your magnificent octopus.
Because it will never be perfect. It will never be the amazing thing you want it to be. And you can kill yourself trying, but every time you look back on it, you will be better. And you'll look at what you've made and you'll want it to be better. And if you just keep changing what you continue what you already have, you will never make more game. You will never finish the game. The idea of a magnum opus is effectively impossible as far as games go. So with Well Gaia, though, I was working on Well Gaia primarily during the time that I started working on Tofu Topple. But eventually a time came when I realized Tofu Topple was going to be a big enough and large enough beast that I needed to focus my full attention on it or it would never be finished. So I did, and we're here, and we did it. But that does mean that I haven't really touched Well Gaia since then. Now that Tofu Topple is effectively done, though, I'm starting to look back at Well Gaia. And I'm looking at what I've done already and why I'm hesitant to work on it and what I can do to make this game something that I want to make. So a discovery that I made recently is Well Gaia proper has been a game that has been in development for almost 10 years in one vague form or another. And I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago.
No, like
I have different thoughts and opinions and desires and worldviews than I had 10 years ago. And in turn, kind of what once excited me about Well Gaia now doesn't as much. It excited 10 years ago me. So I've been taking a good hard look at what there is in the game that I could realistically change without redoing all the work that I've already done, because heaven help me, I'm not doing that. But what I could potentially change to point it in a direction more fitting of who I am now. And also then looking at the work that goes into it, because Well Gaia was actually a very environment art heavy game. So I've also been looking at ways to help pull some of that weight off of me. And I've figured out a lot. I have a pretty good idea where I want to go from here, and honestly, I'm actually getting enthusiastic again about working on Well Gaia.
maybe the pause is just what you needed in terms of that game project.
And from here, I've said before, I've got any number of ideas for games, as every game developer I'm sure does.
Down.
And even though I may have a lot of desire to work on one silly idea or another that I have, well, Gaia has been a weight hanging over my head for too long. So regardless of what my other desires are, well, Gaia is what I'm working on next.
I mean,
I'm finishing that game.
The madness must end.
Until some other side project comes up that you find interesting.
I refuse.
Let the ADHD
I'm putting
consume
my
you.
foot down. No more.
I mean, I remember Well Gaia being a thing when you were a regular on this program, and that was, or the previous program, which was almost 10 years ago in and of itself. Where does the time go?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Anyway, so I suppose we should wrap things up here with how are recordings going?
Not going too bad. Of course, the Backstreet Boys are back in town, though, so that's causing us some problems.
Yes.
So
yes.
what games we can do co-op wise are very limited. Oftentimes I look through my list and go, "Oh, that'd be a neat game to do," that we can't do.
Right.
But as far as games that I'm doing myself, I'm still kind of pushing my way through the list of games that I want to do before I retire, whenever that is. And I would say my enthusiasm still kind of comes and goes, but I feel like that's part of it. Like even recently I did Okage, Shadow
Mhm.
King. And before I started that, after I finished the large project before then, enthusiasm went down. And I'm just sitting there going, what do I want to do? Do I even enjoy video games anymore? And then eventually I thought, Okage was a cool game for cool people.
Back in the cool
and
days.
I got excited about playing that. And I played through it. And by the end, I was hyped again. And then as soon as I beat Okage, I sat down and said, dang, now what do I want to do? Do I even enjoy video games anymore?
Like,
And then I'm looking through games and I'm finding some here and there, and I'm going, no, that one's kind of cool. I could do that one. I could show that off too. And I'm slowly building myself back up. I feel like it's just a touch and go. It's a come and go with large projects. You get so invested and so involved in one particular project that when you finish that project, you don't know what to do with yourself. You've been spending so long doing that one thing that when that thing is absent, you just have a void in you.
Mm-hmm.
I can sort of relate, but like in terms of game playing for the show, it's like the opposite. We spend a set amount of time on like 4 games a week, and then we move on. It's like,
Yeah, that's a thing that goes for a lot of different things, not just or not just like
yep,
making videos or playing games. That goes for game development. You finish a big game that you've been working on for so long, you have to stop and go, now that I'm not spending every waking hour developing this game, what do I do?
It honestly happens to me even with like watching and reading things sometimes.
Hmm.
yeah, it's like I have
Mhm.
finished this thing. What do I do with my time now?
I have more or less quote with one word changed verbatim. Do I even like anime anymore?
Yeah, and kind of in the same vein, like you get so invested in one particular series that you're watching that when it finally finishes and you're like, we're done. We got our nice satisfying ending. There's no more episodes. Now what do I watch?
What is
Yeah.
Do any of these things interest me?
what is going
And it's
to
because you're trying to fill that void. But
Yeah.
that void is very specifically shaped, so nothing is going to fill that void. And it just kind of takes time before you start feeling out other things again.
Yes, indeed. I'm like, well, uh, as much as I'd like to continue this conversation, we do have to move forward with our program. So I'll wrap it up here. Naka, as always, good having you on the program again.
Pleasure.
Yes. Hopefully, next time we have you on, we'll be talking about Well Gaia proper, and it's an actual thing that
Crossing
has
my fingers.
yes, yes. But until then, the game is Tofu Topple. It is coming out soon for the Steam platform,
Yeah,
and
probably
possibly
somewhere in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
right. It is going to retail for $9.99 with a $10 discount. Be sure to wishlist it today. Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, so welcome to the topic discussion.
10% discount, surely. I mean, I love it when I can get a $10 discount on something that costs $9.99, but
Yes. 10%
sorry.
way. So this week we are talking about Lab Zero game, and this isn't like these are not topics we want to talk about, but it's more we have to talk about them because, well, bad things happen. Like, bad things happen on the video game front. You know, like, there's a lot of shit going on with Ubisoft right now. There's some turmoil been going on at Rocksteady Games, for example. But the likes of Jim Sterling have been pretty well covering what's been going on there. As far as I know, he hasn't done a video on Lab Zero Games yet. I'm not even sure if he's aware of the situation, and maybe somebody should inform him of what's going on because, it's like I know his big bag of gimmickry is highlighting the shit that goes on in the AAA sector of video games, and
Which Lab Zero isn't, but yeah.
But yeah, it's like, guess what? Bad shit happens in all the sectors.
Mm-hmm.
Indie developers, and I'm trying to remember if we had Mike Z on the program, or at least the MSP program. Like, we were talking a number of years ago. I think it was like 2012. that we might have had him on the program.
Yeah, if I recall, this was like Skullgirl's Kickstarter territory we were talking about here.
Yeah, like before Skullgirls proper got released. So, it has been a ton of time. So, I don't feel the need to put any like disclaimer because we had, him on recently, like Chris Avalo. But, still, nonetheless, what's been going on at the Lab Zero Games is the studio head, Mike Zamont, has been accused of a lot of shit. Like, pretty much all of the terrible dude bro behavior you would expect from a dude bro, he's been accused of.
And as a result, pretty much everyone but him has left Lab Zero Games, and most of the people who work with Lab Zero Games aren't working with them anymore.
It's pretty bad.
Bad might be the understatement of the fucking year.
Again, if you want some details of what he has done, let's see. He made a "I can't breathe" joke on a charity live stream. That was a whole thing. He's been accused of online harassment by a Twitch streamer named Bunny. Followed for a time. He's been accused of other sexual harassments at the workplace. All around bad guy. And yeah, the situation apparently at Lab Zero Games has become so untenable that a lot of their prominent people have left. And what the Lab Zero Game situation is, in one sense, like, okay, in terms of Skullgirls, apparently it's not going to affect anything. Like, Autumn Games has said that Skullgirls content is going to continue because they're the rights holders, not Lab Zero Games. And it looks like they're going to be working with Skullgirls mobile developer, Hidden Variable Studios, moving forward.
I think a lot of the people, like Skullgirls, I think is older than like Lab Zero as a separate entity. So
yes. Like when we talked to Lab Zero Games, they were not Lab Zero Games. I think they were Autumn Games proper. Like, Autumn Games was a developer at the time, but things went south with the IP in terms of like Konami, and then it was a whole thing. And like, I'm not sure how much of the details have come out in the years since, and how much of that matters at this stage. But point is, Skullgirls is going to be fine. What we don't know is what the state of Indivisible is.
because that is a Lab Zero game ultimately.
Yes. We don't know if like any more patchwork is going to be done. Because I know like Switch owners, I think, have been waiting for a patch.
I think so, and also there on all platforms there was significant plans for stuff to be added to the game that are now in extreme jeopardy.
Yes.
If not actually, I have not been able to confirm. Not that I've tried super hard whether any of the stuff is like officially canceled or anything, but certainly the people who were supposed to be doing it are probably going to have a lot harder time of doing it if they still intend to.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot. To talk about in terms of what's going. Like, it's all very straightforward, and there's not a lot of nuance. In terms of the allegations, like, I say a good chunk of your prominent staff quitting on you kind of tells you how big of a douche canoe you've been.
Usually, yeah.
So, it's like, it's a bit flat in terms of an actual conversation here, but I did want to highlight this because this has kind of been going under the radar because, Lab Zero is a prominent indie developer, but they're an indie developer nonetheless. So larger pundits probably not even aware of what's going on here. And, hopefully the people who have left Lab Zero Games, will find work elsewhere and quickly. and hopefully, Lab Zero Games will come under new management or whatever. Hopefully, Indivisible isn't going to be left to rot on the vine.
Because it is certainly a promising game, even if it still needs some sanding.
Right.
And I don't say that only because I backed it for a significant amount.
Duly noted.
I backed it for a significant amount because I thought it had promise.
Yes. And yeah, so we'll see if we have more Lab Zero updates in the near future. Once again, it's kind of like this happened about a week ago, so it's a very fluid situation. And I'd also expect more bad shit to come out about Mike Zymont, because that's about the most expected thing that could happen in this situation. Really setting himself up to be the next Tyrone Rodriguez. And if you don't know who that is, well, he's a similar indie piece of shit that we've talked about on the show. So hopefully things get resolved with as little pain in the future as possible, for whatever that is worth. Anyway, so that will about do it for Fragments of Silicon. If you enjoyed tonight's broadcast, if you listen to us on Naka's channel, or Naka tweets out the recorded episode, and you want to hear more from us, be sure to come to our Twitch page here at twitch.tv/Fragments of Silicon. Subscribe, hit the bell. You do all the things you do to keep abreast of when content goes out in this modern content world. Anyway, it's like this episode will be up on YouTube on Friday, after the recording of our European episode. And speaking of which, coming up on Friday, September 5th. September 4th, sorry. Looking at the wrong month there. September 4th, we'll be having Fabio Ferrara of Chubby Pixel. They are an Italian developer who have created a multitude of games, including Suicide VR and the Whittle Tree Adventure games. The series of platformers, or it's a Whittle Tree, like Adventure's just one of them. Sorry. They got some other things here, like the Deer Catcher, Heaven's Forest. So we'll see how much of a list episode this is going to be, because for those who might not know what that is, this is when a developer or publisher has a lot of games to get through and they want to get through. So we spend like maybe 5 minutes on each one, and that's the entire episode. You got to be efficient because we only have an hour before people have to start going to work. Okay, granted, I know
less than an hour now.
Yes, I know, but hour is the typical amount. So just work.
I'm sure you guys can finish without me.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so coming up on the Sunday reviews, we've got review on Bleeding Moons, which is an interesting title. It's kind of a visual novel grafted onto an RPG Maker RPG game. More on that on Sunday. But it's a very mature tale as well, so there are going to be trigger warnings, because there's a lot of adult shit going on. Not just violence and sex, but that shit is dealt with too. Like there's an attempted rape, for example. So trigger warnings on. Let's see, we got Explosive Dinosaurs, specifically the Nintendo Switch version. Galax is handling that as best as he can. It's a multiplayer focused title, so
it's basically a mini game collection.
Yeah. So, anyway, we got 112th Seed for the PlayStation 4, which is a platform game, and Candy Machine, which is a management sim around building a candy machine, a candy factory, specifically. I think. So all that's upcoming, and until Friday, I shall wish you good gaming.